Hello, my treasures. It's time for some more cards to be reviewed for the March of the Lich King Hearthstone set. Today, we have gotten some of the cards for Druid, which most have actually been leaked out in the previous 2 days, but I wanted to wait until they were officially announced, and Mage, which are completely new and introduces a new type of deck, which for me is going to be incredibly fun to play, but it's going to probably be incredibly annoying for most people too. So let's begin. First card revealed was Lingering Zombie, which is a 1 cost, 1 attack, 1 HP undead minion for Druid that has the Death Rattle. Summon a 1/1 disarmed zombie with Death Rattle. Summon a 1/1 zombie. So it's basically 3 bodies for the price of 1. Really, really good for any type of aggro base deck that Druid could easily have access to. It also allows you to easily run Secret Nathria in those styles of deck or any other additional really good infused cards, because this is basically 3 bodies for the price of 1, which is absolutely insane. I do like the fact that they're using something besides a stereotypical human as the undead for the zombie, which adds a little bit of diversity when it comes to undead characters that have been featured so far, especially given the fact that in the Warcraft universe, most of the time, whenever something is a undead, they're usually just either a full skeleton where you might see the original race in that skeleton, or B, they're just like a paler version of the normal race. Anyways, enough with the art appreciation. Let's go on to the next card, which is Unending Swarm, which is a 6 cost spell for Druid that resurrects all friendly minions that cost 2 or less. Basically, this means a aggro-based Druid deck is going to have access to every single card that they have had killed by their opponent on turn 6, which is going to be incredibly annoying, though there are some meme implications for a card like this, such as using Boar in it so you can get the Sword of a Thousand Truths, which might be fun to try out week 1. But honestly, this is probably one of those cards that is probably going to see a lot of play, though it could be a little bit too high cost of a card to see much play. It really just depends on how many AoE removal tools that we will be getting in this set. I'd be very much shocked if the Blood Elf themed classes did not get any type of AoE board clears, because it does seem like the Scourge are going to be able to swarm the field incredibly easily, and this card definitely is a card that fits that ideal. The other thing I'm really curious about is if it'll count minions that don't normally cost 2 or less, but you did play them for 2 or less, such as discounting them through something like Vander or so on and so forth, because that could make that card incredibly strong in a Vander or big Druid deck where you're using Celestial Alignment to make everything cost 1. I'm assuming Blizzard probably thought about that, and it's probably only going to summon things that cost 2 or less naturally, but you never know. Now for the next card, which is Wither, which is a 2 cost nature spell for Druid that choose a minion. Each friendly undead steals 1 attack and 1 health from it. This card is just great. It serves as a hard target removal on any of your opponent's minions if you have a bunch of undead minions on your board. It also serves as a purpose to buff up all those undead minions, which is going to be incredibly annoying. And if the opponent has some type of big taunt, but only 1 big taunt, then you in theory could get rid of the big taunt by using a card like this and then making your entire board, and thus achieving lethal maybe a turn or 2 earlier than you normally would in another style of Druid deck. For 2 mana, this card is absolutely insane and is going to be incredibly annoying to deal with. I can't see a world where this doesn't see a nerf pretty early on to either just give you attack or HP instead of both. I'm assuming it will probably go for attack instead of HP, which will make it a much more fair card to play against. All right, for the last Druid card, Elder Nadox, which is a 5 cost undead minion for Druid. It has 5 attack, 4 HP. Battlecry, destroy a friendly undead. Your minions gain its attack. A way to spread out the attack that you gain from the last card or any other type of AoE buff that Druid might have an easy time to access. Even at 5 mana, this honestly is probably an incredibly good card to try to run in a aggro deck, because it only requires you to run a very small number of undead minions instead of having the entire pool being undead minions within your deck, because it doesn't only give undeads that attack that you are destroying the friendly undead for. And mind you, most undead minions are going to probably have some type of death rattle or something else that might actually benefit from it actually dying, or some of your other undead synergy you might get from destroying an undead minion so you can place down a big swarm the following up turn. There's a lot of interesting ways you could use a card like this, and it's probably going to be used mostly in a aggro deck. All right, now for Mage. First card being Arcane Worm, which is a 1-cost 1 attack, 2 HP minion that has the battle cry, add an Arcane Bolt to your hand. Arcane Bolt being the very first card that we ever saw for Mage in the set, which does 1 damage normally, but has a Mana Thirst 8, where it can do up to 3 damage whenever you do get that Mana Thirst off, and it only costs 1 mana, which is absolutely insane, especially if you have a bunch of cards that will allow you to generate additional copies of it, and if you can get any type of spell power. It's cool to see a arcane-based mage deck actually maybe come into fruition, since we have only really seen fire and frost mage decks in the past. Arcane Mage seems to be the one unexplored specialization from World of Warcraft from mages. And while Arcane does make a lot more sense than Frost for a set themed around Blood Elves, I'm really shocked we haven't seen anything related to Fire Mage at all, given the fact that the Fire Mage artifact weapon is a Blood Elf artifact. And the fact that we haven't seen any is kind of a shame, in my opinion, though I do really like the idea of having these big combo mage decks back into Standard Hearthstone, especially with the questline floating around and other ways to get additional spell power really, really easily. Maybe a Heritage Mage deck might actually come into fruition. For the next card revealed, it is Magister's Apprentice, which is a 2-cost, 3 attack, 2 HP minion that makes your arcane spells cost 1 less. In combination with the fact that the main way to do damage in an arcane mage deck is a 1-cost spell, this card is absolutely insane. I'm shocked that they decided to print a card like this. It's similar to Sorcerer's Apprentice, except this only deals with arcane spells, though there are other ways to discount all spells within Mage, such as Siphon Mana, which is also an arcane spell. Between those two cards, I do think a arcane-based Mage deck is probably incredibly easy to actually make with this type of set. It always is worrisome to see a just AoE blank mana cheat within the game, and this card could in theory be incredibly broken with all the cards that we will be seeing that generate arcane bolts. Speaking of which, we are seeing Arc Splinter, which is a 3-cost 3 attack, 2 HP Death Rattle minion that adds 2 arcane bolts to your hand when it dies. Now, all the Blood Elf constructs, for some weird reason in Hearthstone, are not considered mechs, but they've been incredibly consistent with them not being mechs. And honestly, I'm assuming the reason why they didn't give this one a mech tag besides that is the fact that if they did, this could be incredibly powerful for a mech-based mage deck, especially if you can generate additional copies of this, because late into the game, you're going to have an entire handful of arcane bolts that will do 3 damage per arcane bolt for 1 mana apiece, thus finishing your opponent off really easily. Because even at 1 mana apiece, if they're going to do 3 damage, you're going to be able to do 30 damage on turn 10, which is bonkers. And if you have any way to get some additional spell damage, then that maximum damage output will increase incredibly high. I don't see a world where this doesn't see play if the Arcane Mage base deck does. Alright, now for the last card, Vexlaris, which is a 5-cost elemental minion for Mage with 3 attack, 5 HP. Your arcane spells cast twice. So if you can actually play this out on turn 8, that means all of your arcane bolts are going to do 6 damage instead of 3 damage. So if you didn't have any ways to actually discount them before, you're going to have at least 18 damage in your hand. However, if you have something like Siphon Life or even just one of the Magister Apprentice out on the board, you can do absurd amount of damage between this and any type of arcane damaging spells you have in your hand, because most of the arcane damaging spells are really cheap. And honestly, this is going to be absolutely broken. I love cards like this because I love OTK miracle style of decks. However, I do know they are incredibly unfun to play against, which is a little bit worrisome to see a card like this actually come into the game. Though if there were additional ways to generate easy additional elementals, then this card would be way better because you could rely on some of those cards instead of just running it in your deck in case this card actually gets stolen from you through one of the many ways that Blizzard has been printing to deal with combo decks like this. On turn 10, in combination with like 5 arcane bolts, you're going to be able to do 30 damage, which was your maximum output with 10 arcane bolts. But if you have some type of way to get additional spell damage, this card just scales way quicker. Because you got to remember, any card that has spell damage on it will count as double the spell damage because everything's casting twice. Alright, so those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know down below if you're looking forward to either playing Aggro Druid or Arcane Mage. Both represent a completely different playstyle from each other, so it does show there's going to be a wide variety of decks. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.